Well, thank you. It's good to be here for our final session. Actually, there will be a little session after this, and that is a question and answer session. And so we'll do our best to answer your questions. But just a couple of other things. I was reminded I talked about our master's programs. We have an online and an in-person counseling master's, which leads to licensed counseling. And the religion master's I talked to you about, but people reminded me I didn't talk too much about our undergraduate programs. We have an associate's degree in nursing and a bachelor's in nursing, and we have a cutout for being the most unique nursing program in the nation. What does that mean? That means that we are fully approved by the nursing board to teach nutrition and lifestyle interventions in the treatment of disease. And so our nurses come out knowing a whole lot of things and being able to instruct patients that are being discharged from the hospital to no longer need the hospital anymore. And they're fully equipped to be able to give a lot of that information. And you'd think with all that we're teaching our nurses, that might be too much in an associate or bachelor's degree nursing to learn all of that. But we also have the highest board passing rate in all of the Adventist nursing programs, well over 90+%. And our nurses do get great jobs as a result of that nursing cutout. They're asked to do a lot of unique types of nursing jobs that pay pretty well. One of our health programs is called the Health Evangelism and Leadership Training Program. That's H-E-A-L-T-H. And that program, just recently, the head of 6 different hospitals came, and they were so impressed with just one semester of training. So you can even take this right out of high school, but we even have 80-year-olds taking the training, so any age, to become a well-paid medical missionary in one semester. How does that happen? Well, the hospital president is so excited about hiring our graduates to work for his 6 hospital systems that he's actually willing to pay 2/3 of your tuition. What does that mean? That means you only have to pay $3,000, and that includes, your living expenses, your food, and all of that. And it costs more than $3,000 to live for 6 months, as far as, and especially when you're getting Weimar healthy food and all of that. As long as you sign on the bottom line that you will work for this hospital system. So what are you going to be doing? As soon as a patient is discharged from the hospital, you will be visiting that patient in their home, going over their disease issues, and instructing them in nutrition and lifestyle principles so they never have to go back to the hospital again. I asked why are hospitals interested in that? Because they really lose money when there's recidivism. Medicare pays for that first admission. They won't pay for the bounce back second admission. And so they're losing a lot of money with people just repeating the same behavior, expecting different results. And it goes right back into the hospital system again. And so I asked the hospital president, because the name of our certificate program is Health Evangelism and Leadership Training for who? For him. And so I said, our students learn how to study the Bible with people. Also Bible and health, and it can help them with their overall self-control. Are you willing to have your hires to be studying the Bible with people in their home? And he says, absolutely. He says if it prevents them from going back into the hospital again, they can give all the Bible studies they want. And so he's totally on board, and I have no doubt that there will be souls saved in the kingdom, and also many souls that will be saved in this life as well to have a far better life. So that's a ready-made program. You'll actually take from me a course called Lifestyle Treatments of Disease. In fact, several people have asked me about Proof Positive. That was our first book that we came out with. Proof Positive is how to achieve optimal health through nutrition and lifestyle. And that book is being totally revamped. It's a whole new edition with all new studies, plus new chapters on gastroenterology, Crohn's disease, a lot of the more difficult diseases. And you learn about all those diseases when you come through WEMAR, because that's the course that I teach, Lifestyle Treatments of Disease. And you'll also learn so many other aspects in regards to medical missionary work. So that's a very popular one-semester course, and he's hoping to hire 25 of our graduates come December to really help his bottom line at the hospital system. We also, of course, not only have nursing, associate's degree, and bachelor's level nursing. Our bachelor's level nursing, by the way, you become board certified by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine right out of nursing school. And so you are actually a lifestyle medicine boarded professional in our bachelor's program. We're the only bachelor's of nursing program that provides that. But we also have a pre-med program. And of course, the pre-med program, they rotate through the clinics there. We have several clinics on campus, but we also have New Start. The New Start program is the program that treats advanced coronary disease, diabetes, renal failure, all the common chronic diseases, inflammatory diseases like autoimmune diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, asthma, all those physical conditions, obesity, and that program runs every month, and our students get to rotate through that and see all of the changes that are taking place and hear all of the ways in which this patient is going to combat this disease through nutrition and lifestyle. We have also a pre-dent program, and so many dentists actually come through. We also have a big dental clinic on campus that they can work at while they're there. And many of the pre-med students also work as a medical assistant or as a scribe in one of the clinics. And then, of course, we also have depression and anxiety recovery. We have a interdisciplinary psychology program, and we also, of course, the medical programs also have students that rotate through that. So if you're in the counseling program, you're going to rotate through with a counselor. If you're in the religion department, you're going to rotate through with the spiritual counselor. And by the way, what better way of becoming a pastor than to know how to counsel right off the bat? Most pastors are asked for counseling, but they have no clue really on how to do the counseling, but they'll have already counseled very difficult cases by the time they're through that. And of course, if they're in the pre-med program, they'll be rotating with me, the physician, or with another board-certified physician who might be fellowship trained by us. And then if they're in the nursing department, they'll be rotating through the nurses. We have, of course, nurses that are playing a vital role in that program. And then in addition to that, we have a business program. The business is for business management and also healthcare administration. And one of the things that we have found, particularly in our mission hospitals, WEMAR is a mission organization, and we're so dedicated to missions that every week we have our entire campus empties out on Wednesday afternoons to serve the community. It's called Total Community Involvement. And so we're doing mission work every week in our local communities. And we also do mission work around the world. We just had mission trips in Kenya, in Japan, in I can't even remember all the places. I should be able to remember all the places. By the way, in Kenya, I think we had over 100 baptisms from our students that went there and put on a threefold ministry health evangelistic series there. And we also had many other missions going on. But back to the missions, we have a lot of mission hospitals. And those hospitals are not run very well a good share of the time because there aren't administrators that are trained enough to know about the threefold ministry to run them well. And we're told one of the things that we should do in reaching our world field. In fact, I don't know, I've traveled a lot around the world and done a lot of lecturing around the world. But what I've noticed is you go into just about any major city in this world, and you're going to see a Catholic church, you're going to see an Adventist church, and you're going to see a McDonald's. And in some areas, you will see a big Catholic church, a small Adventist church, but in a lot of areas of the world, you're going to see a small Catholic church and a huge Adventist church. Those are places like Kenya and South Africa and Botswana and a lot of the African continent where you'll see that sort of thing. But we also have Adventist hospitals in those places, in Chad and Ethiopia and those places. And we're told the way to really bring about true conversions is through Christ's threefold ministry. That's also providing the healing message, and that we should align ourselves, not just going there to be students or work for the world, but we should align ourselves or start institutions in these places that can be educational or healthcare institutions to do that. And so that's what we're training our business students to do, is to be basically missionaries in carrying that threefold ministry and also being able to run operationally sound. So I think that covers the majority of the programs. Did I mention music? I didn't mention music. So this year we're starting a full music program. Weimar has always been great into music. We have excellent musicians. I think we have the top musicians in most instruments right there at Weimar, even though we don't have a bachelor's in music program. And so, but this year, after studying the School of the Prophets models, we recognized music was a major part. And so this year, we're starting 3 bachelors of music. You can get it in composition, or you can get it in performance or in education. And the director of our department is a very wonderful composer that composes healthy music. He's actually been commissioned by the General Conference to write an oratorio on the 3 angels' messages. And he's working on that with our students right now. And so we're excited about this music program that is also starting. So Erica, I think you've heard a little bit. Did I miss any programs? I think that covers the bachelor's program. And if you're wanting to learn more about Weimar, last month came out the Weimar magazine. We don't have the Weimar magazine with us. Actually, I gave the final copy over to a group sitting in the front row over there. So you could borrow it maybe if you want to see it. But if you do want to get that Weimar magazine, just give Erica your name and address, and we will send one to you for free so that you can get an idea. Lots of stories in there in regards to exciting things that God is doing at Weimar University. And as I mentioned, all of you are invited at spring break for the Emotional Intelligence Summit. It's always a great summit that you can learn the latest in emotional intelligence issues. So this afternoon, we're going to talk about some areas that can help our biochemistry in nature. And there are mental health benefits of spending time outdoors. Fresh air contains negative ions that improve learning and concentration, reduce anxiety, and improve mood. And negative ions are primarily found where there's moving ocean surf, where there's also waterfalls or moving water. It's one of the advantages also of being here in Georgia and the Tennessee area. I notice there's lots of rivers, and you do have waterfalls and moving water. We also, of course, not too far away from Weimar, we have that moving ocean surf. In fact, if you look at, there's a site called purpleair.com that will tell you where the cleanest air is in the country. the vast majority of the time, the cleanest air is right there at Weimar University. We have the ocean breezes elevating with all of those evergreen trees, and so you'll see 0, 0, 0, 0 as far as particulate matter everywhere. However, there are some times when there are fires in the area where that can be threatened. But I was kind of surprised. I flew into Indiana and Massachusetts in my plane, and there was smoke. I couldn't even hardly see the ground. All this smoke coming from Canada in the East Coast area that was particulating the air. And it's kind of interesting to me. I don't know why. Maybe I probably shouldn't say this in public, but it is sometimes my thoughts. And maybe they need to be corrected. Maybe they're distorted thoughts. But, we have all of these politicians talking about clean air, clean air, clean air. And then when forests are burning and particulate matter is going everywhere, no politician is trying to stop that fire. And, they're not even sending their own firemen there to stop the fire. It's like, let it burn and let pollution happen. And I haven't quite figured that out yet, but if there's a company that's producing particulate matter, man, that company is greedy. They need to have taxes. They need to have all this sort of stuff. But politicians, you can actually tell the firemen to stop the fires. Please do that and clean up our air. After a thunderstorm, clean air, the air gets cleaner. There's negative ions with that lightning that are significant. Evergreen trees emit negative ions. This is why you're in a mountain setting. You can breathe in and get those nice negative ions. And if, yesterday there was a thunderstorm that went through here. If you're ever fortunate enough to go outside right after a big thunderstorm and just breathe deeply, you'll notice that big fresh air smell that occurs as a result of that. By the way, I noticed you have some tall evergreens. There was a few of them. We're used to seeing very tall evergreen trees everywhere in Weimar, but we took a 4-mile hike this morning through the neighborhoods here close, and we saw some very tall evergreen trees on some of those streets. Green spaces have been linked with health. Growing up near green spaces have been associated with a 15 to 55% decreased risk of developing psychiatric illnesses in adulthood, depending on the specific illness. And the green space effect is dose dependent. It's been shown to enhance emotional intelligence. Spending at least 120 minutes a week in nature is associated with better health and well-being. So more than that is even better, but notice 120 minutes a week, that's not a large amount. And I think it's doable for pretty much everybody, but yet still most people don't do that. Adolescents who spend time in green spaces have reduced stress, better emotional well-being, less depression, and improved mental health. I like this phrase that has picked up in the scientific journals. They're calling it NBIs, nature-based interventions. Just being out in nature improves depression and anxiety, improves stress control, reduces negative rumination. Rumination is when you're just thinking in this negative cycle. Improves focus, improves sleep, induces more physical exercise. I don't know what it is, but when you're on a screen, it does the opposite as far as physical exercise. But when you're outside, you just want to walk around. You want to exercise and be a part of it. And of course, when you're outside, it's very hard to use those screens. I don't know if you've noticed, in a bright sunny day, you can't even see them. That's a good thing. So it reduces your use of technology as well. And then there's a nature-based intervention that even is better yet, and that is gardening. Gardening has been shown to reduce depression and anxiety. Reduce body mass index. I think we have some gardeners over here. Increases life satisfaction, increases quality of life, increases self-esteem. And then the Japanese were the first to coin this phrase, forest bathing. Forest bathing, what is it? It's simply spending time in nature in a forest. Researchers found that walking for 2 hours in a mixed natural forest environment improved tension and anxiety, depression and dejection, anger and hostility, fatigue, confusion, And additionally, forest bathing changed negative mood states to positive ones, just being 2 hours walking in a natural forest. Of course, these are things that we model in our depression and anxiety recovery program. In fact, we have a section where they're out there in the forest. They are walking. It's kind of a daily part of what they're doing there and exercising in the forest, but we also have something called farm fun. And the first time that these depressed and anxious people see farm fun on their schedule and realize that they're going to go out and do work on the farm, you'll hear some negative comments. Like, I paid a lot of money to come to this program, and now they're getting free labor out of me working in the farm. I don't think this is right. But you know, despite those negative comments, an hour after they're out there in farm fun, they are all smiling, they're talking about it, they're having a great time coming to their next appointment, and the negativity is gone. They realize, you know what, that was a lot of fun, and look at all that we got done during that hour. So their negative mood states change to positive mood states just by participating in that. And of course, forest bathing has also been shown to improve serotonin levels. Additional benefits is that it's not just mental health, but blood pressure is lowered in those with hypertension. It improves your autonomic function. That means less dizziness when you're getting up and around. It improves your immune system function significantly. Less respiratory allergies, improves mood and stress, and it improves attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, where people are getting easily distracted, which is what ADHD is about. And it also improves your sense of awe and gratitude, and selfless behavior goes up as a result of just forest bathing. One of the aspects of forest bathing, I think we talked about it last night, are the essential oils that are emitted by the trees that you can't get in your local gym. One of those is Selexon. That's the molecule in lavender oil that we talked about that has the anxiety relieving properties of CBD without the THC. Now, a lot of people say, hey, you know, I just use CBD. You can't really get the THC out of the CBD. How do we know that? These people that are using these CBD-only gummies, we test them and THC shows up in their urine, and they're positive. And so and the THC is the harmful component. That's the part that produces psychosis and nihilism. By the way, someone came up to me afterwards and said, you know, you haven't mentioned school shootings. And how are we going to solve that problem? It's actually not all that difficult to solve. Do you know the one agent that's been on board of every school shooter that they've looked at so far? Marijuana. Marijuana, THC is there, and THC produces nihilism. Nihilism is something where you just think it'd be better off if everyone be annihilated. And that's why you see these people shooting up other people that they don't even know. Now, alcohol people won't do that. Alcohol people will shoot up people they know that they're angry at. But they're not going to shoot up people they don't know. That's not something that they'll do. But if they have marijuana on board plus alcohol, that's what they can do. And so nihilism is one of those psychotic features of marijuana usage. And so how could it be pretty simple? You're not allowed to own a gun if you test positive for marijuana. That simple. And we'd be able to help that out significantly. Bergamot. Bergamot actually comes from a citrus that's been shown to be antidepressant. Sandalwood itself, the oil from sandalwood, is antidepressant. Mint is also antidepressant. And even sweet almond. Now, there's actually a sweet almond oil that we will use as a massage agent. So the person is getting the harp music that I talked about while they're getting the massage, and at the same time, they're getting aromatherapy from the sweet almond, and they're getting all of the benefits of the physical aspect of that massage. So when we can combine multiple enhancing features at once, we can really produce a significant benefit. And notice what else shows up there? Pine needle extract. It's been shown to have antidepressant properties. Selexon also not only helps depression, but also anxiety. And then there's other oils like yuzu, limonene, linalool acetate as well. Speaking of Selexon, it's been actually tried against lorazepam. We have a lot of people on benzos that come through our program, and it's just kind of a sad situation. But if you end up in the emergency room with an anxiety attack, any emergency room here in Georgia, I can almost guarantee you that you will be given an IV benzo, or at least an oral benzo, in that emergency room to help alleviate your anxiety. And the first time you take that, you're thinking, I have found my problem. I have an Ativan deficiency. And so Ativan took care of it. It filled my GABA receptors. I'm feeling calm again. Watch out, because as those GABA receptors continue to get filled with lorazepam, your brain will shut down its GABA production plant. And so if you're on that for now 30 days worth, then your anxiety level is tenfold worse when you try to get off the lorazepam. And so you're totally dependent now, and you're needing more and more, and you don't think you're ever going to be able to get off it, and you're having to see all these doctors, but you can get off it. And interestingly, people that come to our program, they will get off their benzos, and their anxiety level will be far lower without the benzos than it was with the benzos, because we've taken care of the underlying condition. But one of the ways in which we help them when they come to our program is we give them this agent called Lavella, or Selexon. It contains significant anxiety-relieving properties without sedation, without addiction, and without frontal lobe suppression. The lorazepam and the benzos all have the signature of suppressing the frontal lobe. It also has an antidepressant effect, increases serotonin release and extracellular brain serotonin levels. That means it's in the synapse. Even smelling it helps, but it's most effective and predictable when taken orally. 80 milligrams of Selexon is equal a quarter milligram of lorazepam. They've even tested it in those with test anxiety. We have people in every university that say, I know my material, but I get so anxious that I just freak out in the test, and that's why I'm getting D's and F's. And so often, they'll see the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist says, well, before this test, you ought to take lorazepam. Fill those GABA receptors, make yourself less anxious. So they'll take it, they'll feel less anxious, but their scores will actually get worse. Why is that? Because it suppressed their frontal lobe, their problem-solving ability, which they needed to do on the test. So what do we do in its place? Lavella, or Selexon. That will relieve the anxiety, but their scores go up because it's not a frontal lobe suppressant. Their frontal lobe is able to work, and their anxiety is being relieved. Deep breathing is also helpful. It's been shown to relax the body, oxygenate the brain for clear thinking, helps prevent respiratory infections, induces sound, sweet sleep, and it improves mood. Now, we have to teach people the proper diaphragmatic breathing focus on slow, deep breaths that rely on that diaphragm. Such breaths have been shown to combat the common relative of anxiety, which is rapid, shallow breaths. Maintaining good posture, taking stretch breaks often, getting exercise whenever you can will aid proper breathing and maintain healthy lungs. There was a nice controlled trial that was conducted for 8 weeks. It put people on breathing exercises where they could breathe no more than one breath every 15 seconds or 4 breaths a minute for just 15 minutes a day, 3 days a week, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You'd think, well, that's not going to really change a whole lot. By the way, the only way you can breathe 4 times a minute and not get short of breath is to breathe how? Breathe deeply. Breathe with that diaphragm. By the way, we teach people to breathe that way when they are singers in our choir, so that's part of learning the vocal aspect, or if you want to be a good vocalist, you have to learn how to breathe that way. So just 3 days a week of that improved mood, anxiety, focus, attention, and even their cortisol levels went down considerably. Contrast baths have also shown to be very beneficial for a number of different conditions. We call this hydrotherapy, a series of short repeated immersions in water alternating between hot and cold. They'll get into the hot tub, and it's kind of a group hot tub. Of course, we have the women and men separated, but they will be in that hot tub getting nice and toasty and nice and warm, and then they go into a cold tub. Now, usually when we start out, it's not that cold, but in contrast, it seems cold. It's about the temperature of the Los Angeles beaches. And the Pacific beach, of course, is colder than the Atlantic beach because those currents come down from Alaska. So it's about 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and they're in it for less than a minute, or right around a minute. And by the way, we don't time it. We don't start the timer until their shoulders are immersed. So sometimes they're trying to go down slowly, and that's just going to prolong the agony. So they need to go down there with the shoulders all in. And of course, that's why we teach them that song, I don't like it, I don't like it, it's okay, I can stand it anyway. We've never killed anybody that way. We've never injured anybody. They don't have to go to the hospital. And amazingly, even though many times they don't like it the first day, by day 10, we actually don't do it on day 10. Day 10 is graduation day. We don't have time for hydrotherapy, but they're trying to pay the hydrotherapist under the table for one more treatment because they realize this makes me feel really good, and it really helps that brain function. But I should tell you historically how we got to where everyone was doing it. We used to run our programs, they used to be 18-day programs. And when we started out in Oklahoma, we hadn't done residential programs yet. I had just treated people in an outpatient setting. I knew these principles worked, but in an outpatient setting, we can't do all of the things that help you all at once. We'll do maybe exercise and light first, and then the next time they see us, then we'll be working on nutrition, and then we might work on it because they can't really encompass all at once. The advantage of coming through a residential program is that you can encompass this all at once. So I told our first program, in fact, I said, every screener needs to tell these patients they're not going to be any better in 18 days because it takes at least a month for this to start working. So tell them they're not going to be any better in 18 days, but if they continue on these things, they'll get better. And I thought we might not have a lot of takers on it, but we had 30 people sign up for that first program, 29 females and 1 male. I don't know if that means the 29 females were more trusting of me, but that 1 male actually was pretty nervous being the only male with 29 females around. But I still get in touch with him to this day. That program was 21 years ago. And he's still doing very well, and those females are doing well. But what surprised me and everybody else is that they were all getting better by 18 days. They were doing very well. And the second program we had, there was a woman that day 14 was not getting any better. She saw everybody else starting to get better, but she wasn't. And she was a wife of a professional up in Alaska, and she was getting nervous. Paid all this money, all these other people are getting better, I'm complying with the program, I'm not getting better. So she saw me and I said, we need to give you contrast hydrotherapy. So she went through the contrast hydrotherapy, and 2 days later, day 16, she's now doing better than the other ones that were doing better. They're still getting better too, but she just really got dramatically better. And all of the other patients said, she got better so quick, and you're giving her something you haven't given any of us. We want what she's getting. And so when that happened, we thought, you know what, unless there's a contraindication, let's just send everybody through the contrast hydrotherapy. By the way, it also does other things too. It helps you to be able to tolerate frustrations better. And so, because some people think it's a frustration having to go through these hydro treatments. But interestingly, as it As we go further, you get a better effect as you make it a little cooler. So once they get used to it, we'll send it down to 55 degrees. And then often there's a challenge among particularly the men as to who can take it the coldest. Send it down to 40 degrees for us, and they're pouring all this ice in, as you're getting ready to go in to get that temperature down there lower. And I should tell you this as well. We've had some psychotic patients come through our program. They love the cold, and they love to be in it longer. We won't let them be in it for more than 8 minutes, but their brain will normalize post-cold bath. And there was one gentleman who had been psychotic for 20 years, and when he normalized after that cold bath, we had him take his phone and call his dad. And his dad said, "I haven't had a conversation like that with my son in 20 years. What are you doing to normalize that brain?" Well, the normalization wouldn't last for over about 30 minutes. And so, but you can't keep someone in a cold bath all day long as well. There can be complications on the other side of things. Now we'll only take psychotic or schizophrenic patients if it's early onset. Early onset we can actually reverse and get a better. But it does help for both anxiety and depression. Of course, it's used in sports medicine, athletic training, rehab settings as well. And the benefits go beyond just mood. Increased blood flow and oxygenation to tissue, decrease in swelling and stiffness, promotes healing, improves limb function, quickens recovery, and we call it nature's shock treatment. Many people that come to our program have been referred for ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, where we induce seizures. I shouldn't say we do it. The psychiatrists and the anesthesiologists that are involved in this induce the seizures, and it's under a general anesthetic, but it has serious complications because you lose your memory, even memory of past events, etc. We've never had a patient referred for ECT who came to our program instead who then needed ECT. So this is nature's shock treatment. And I should also say it's a great benefit in regards to pain, chronic pain. We had an individual that had a helicopter accident where the helicopter just dropped out of the sky and his spine collapsed and he needed all of this surgery. He was in the military and he had chronic pain for years. He also had anxiety, and so he came to our program for anxiety, but he noticed the hydro treatments completely alleviated his chronic pain in his back, and so a lot of benefits can happen. Bright light is also an effective antidepressant. It's effective for treating seasonal affective disorder. It gives results equivalent to SSRIs. Those are the standard medicines for non-seasonal depression. But it works best for those who have fatigue or have a tendency to eat or sleep too much. Also works for partum and postpartum depression. What we recommend for women who are prone to depression after having a baby is that they wake up every day, get exposed to this light for 30 minutes, then they go back to sleep to catch up. And that will prevent the partum and postpartum depression. It works even better in bipolar depression. It gives results even quicker than medicine, but it can be used with or without medication. So on a cloudy day, that's pretty thick clouds, you'll get 2,500 lux outside, but it'll take 2 hours to get a benefit. Where it's more thin clouds, it'll be 5,000 lux. You'll only need an hour of outside to get that bright light. But if there is no clouds, you'll get 10,000 lux or more, and then you only need 30 minutes of light in order for it to be beneficial. Of course, we use devices for this if the sun isn't up. In the wintertime, everyone is using a light box in the morning to wake up at Weimar. And we have found out you only need 1,000 lux, or even less than that, if you don't do the white light. White light is what you'll get on a cloudy day. But if you do the blue light, which is the blue emitted from the blue sky, the same wavelength, and much less intensity, and it will set your body clock. And you don't want to have it right directly ahead. Not that it's bad, but it's not as good. It's the rods in the eyes, not the cones that reset your circadian rhythm clock. It's tied into your suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is your timekeeper in your brain. And you want to have it offset about 20 or more degrees and then you'll get that rod stimulation. And when you do that at the same time every day for 7 days, you begin to sleep like a baby, and you wake up refreshed with a lot of energy. We now have the blue light in wearables, so now you can walk around with it. It's like glasses. People think it's, the kids and teenagers like it particularly because they look like a Star Wars being or something with these, with these light glasses shining on them. And that way they can do things and get ready for the day and still get that wavelength of blue light in. So research on bright light therapy, researchers found that men who are exposed to an hour of bright light first thing in the morning experienced an increase in luteinizing hormone. Luteinizing hormone is a brain hormone that influences both men and women in their reproductive hormones. Increases in LH in men drive up what? Testosterone levels. Now, unfortunately, there's a big racket going on in America today over trying to get men to find out what their T levels are and then shooting them up with testosterone pellets or testosterone shots. They're very expensive, and testosterone shots will increase anxiety, increase gynecomastia, and have other side effect issues. But they're not telling these men, if you would just get exposed to an hour of bright light, you'll be able to double your testosterone within 30 days by increasing your luteinizing hormone. There are other natural ways, actually, of getting testosterone levels up. And the bright light will trigger ovulation in women. So studies have shown LH also helps with depression, it improves libido, and has a muscle building and strengthening effect. And when women with long and irregular menstrual cycles are exposed to bright light, the cycles regularize. We're seeing a lot of impotence today in 30 or 40-year-old men, what we call erectile dysfunction. And in yesteryear, you didn't have that in 60 and 70-year-old farmers. Why is that? The farmers were outside, they were getting that bright light every morning. They weren't on screens and those sorts of things, which end up inducing and many times that issue and lowering those testosterone levels. And of course, many of these men are having to take medicines for their condition. And by the way, these medicines that they're taking for their erectile dysfunction do not improve their testosterone levels. They don't improve their muscle building and strengthening effect, but the light will do all of those things. The average American, as I mentioned last night, spends over 90% of their time indoors, however. And one of the things where if we're going to help the mental health crisis is to take people from indoors to outdoors. And as I mentioned, infrared light. Most of our time spent indoors, it might be exposed to lighting, which do not emit near-infrared photons of light. The near-infrared portion of natural light stimulates an excess of antioxidants in each of our healthy cells. It does that by producing the intracellular melatonin, the most potent antioxidant in the body. And the cumulative effect of this antioxidant reservoir enhances the body's ability to rapidly deal with changing conditions throughout the day. While circulatory melatonin may be the hormone of darkness, intracellular melatonin is the hormone of daylight, and we get that only through infrared light. In addition, and this is the spectrum that we look at, 700 nanometers, 2500 nanometers does this, and now you can get LED lights that emit this. But near-infrared has been shown to boost metabolism, prevent mitochondria from burning out, might affect even longevity that way, increases energy, cognitive performance is enhanced, particularly post-traumatic brain injury, reduces PTSD symptoms, and reduces inflammation within the body. We also see a lot of pain relief with infrared therapy. And once again, this is best gotten from the sun. So then circadian rhythm hits are often an issue where people are not on a regular bedtime or wake time. They have regular insomnia, they have early morning awakening, or they're sleeping more than 6 hours, more than 9 hours, or less than 6 hours, or constantly changing their shifts, or they just induce irregular times for sleeping and eating. This is not healthy for the brain, and so one of the things that we get some importance in is just having a regular schedule for wake time, getting up time, which will be induced in our therapeutic program. I wanted to mention some things nutritionally also. We're giving some of the highlights of our behavioral aspect. This is looking at norepinephrine production. But again, you have to have L-tyrosine in the brain, which turns into L-dopa, then dopamine, then norepinephrine, then stored in those vesicles, and then released when an electrical transmission occurs. And if it's working normally, it's then vacuumed back up for further usage. But when there's a shortage of it, we then give a patient an SNRI, selective norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor. It sounds nice, but really it should be called a norepinephrine vacuum cleaner plugger, because that's what it's doing. It's plugging the vacuum cleaners, and it's allowing more norepinephrine to interface with the receptor, but at an expense of causing an I don't care attitude and increase impulsivity. So nutritional issues and lack of mental power. It could be not enough tryptophan in the brain. It could be not enough tyrosine. It could be due to excess cholesterol. It could be due to excess arachidonic acid. It could be due to insufficient dietary folate. Even insufficient iron is common, particularly in women. Low omega-3 fatty acid intake, that's an anti-inflammatory. Insufficient magnesium, which is very important for methylation. And now we're recognizing insufficient zinc is a big issue. Or it could be a B6 problem, a thiamine problem, or not enough choline or resveratrol. So these are things that we're all looking at. These are the most common issues that are affecting people's biochemically. Tryptophan, if we get more of it in the brain, it's been shown to decrease quarrelsome behaviors and increase agreeable behaviors. As a parent, you would be very interested in getting more tryptophan into your child's brain. Tryptophan supplementation has been shown to improve premenstrual dysphoria. This is where you don't feel good before your period. Seasonal affective disorder, depression, insomnia, obstructive sleep apnea. What's another lifestyle treatment for obstructive sleep apnea? Weight loss. That's right. If you go down to your ideal weight, 80% of patients that are on a CPAP mask will no longer need it, and they will be able to sleep like a baby without it. However, 20% will still need it, and what will often cure them is getting enough tryptophan into the brain. It also helps withdrawal from drugs. This is why the people come to our program. We have such a high success rate in people with significant addictions, and nicotine is one of those significant addictions. It's hard to get over nicotine, and now they're taking it in higher doses through all of this e-cigarettes aspect of things, or vaping with all these different flavors and colors and things like that. Highly addictive substance. But when they come to our program, they're amazed at how easy it is to give up. Now, one of the risks of how easy it is to give up is they'll say, you know, this was not a problem at all. Of course, we're giving them food where they're getting tryptophan into their brain. We're doing things to really help them to get over this addiction. And they'll then think, it was so easy, if I go back to it, I can just give it up again. Then they go back to it, and then they can't give it up again because they're not in that type of environment with all of that support. So they really need to stay off of it once they've given it up in our program. Tryptophan supplementation has also been shown to improve autism and cognitive function. It's a frontal lobe stimulant, as well as social affiliation and sleep. Why tryptophan for sleep? Because tryptophan turns into serotonin in response to bright enough light, and if we make enough serotonin in the daytime, then we can turn that into melatonin at night, which can help us with our sleep. So these are the foods rich in tryptophan. You can see these are some of the top ones: oats, tofu, flax, black walnuts, sunflower seeds, sesame seeds, chia seeds, and pumpkin seeds. You'll see this in our program in abundance in a lot of different dishes. And this can make a very significant difference. Now, it's not just the tryptophan. We like to have it low in the other competitors that are going to fill that gap and prevent tryptophan from getting into the brain. And so you can see the best foods there to get it into the brain are rice, spinach, pumpkin seeds. Quinoa is even better than pumpkin seeds. Flax is even better than quinoa. Cauliflower is up there near the top. Sweet potato even higher. grapes even higher, and chia seeds are at the top as far as getting that tryptophan into the brain. But we not only need tryptophan, we need it with carbs as well. There's 3 critical dietary factors that work together to improve mood and cognition. It's tryptophan, carbs, and the vitamins and minerals that are necessary to get it translated over to serotonin and melatonin. Large neutral amino acids compete with tryptophan to cross the blood-brain barrier. Carbohydrates derived from whole foods reduce the stress hormone cortisol, and carbohydrates induce muscles to uptake the large neutral amino acids, thus improving tryptophan access to the brain. Carbohydrates increase brain tryptophan absorption and therefore increase serotonin. A low-carb, high-protein diet, which is being used by many Americans today, reduces the amount of tryptophan in the brain, and that's why it's not sustainable long-term. You're going to run into issues. This is printed in the journal Psychiatry Neuroscience, and I'll just read the conclusion of this. Tryptophan is transported into the brain by a transport system that is active toward all the large neutral amino acids, and tryptophan is the least abundant amino acid in protein. There is competition between the various amino acids for the transport system, so after the ingestion of a meal containing protein, the rise in the plasma level of the other large neutral amino acids will prevent the rise in plasma tryptophan from increasing brain tryptophan. The idea common in popular culture that high-protein foods such as turkey will raise brain tryptophan and serotonin is what? Unfortunately, false. So tryptophan is in turkey, but that tryptophan does not get into the brain because it has more of the competition that prevents the tryptophan from getting into the brain. So that's why we don't want to take the protein supplements. We want to have the protein with the carbs. Tyrosine is also an important amino acid. Those given tyrosine have significantly reduced headaches, stress, fatigue, muscle aches, and sleepiness compared to controls. Improvements were noted in mood and mental states. That means their happiness was better, their mental clarity, their hostility and tension were better, and cognitive tests also improved. That means their math skills went up. Coding map compass, pattern recognition in the tyrosine group. Tyrosine increased feelings of vigor and improved the blood pressure. Interestingly, the SNRIs, tyrosine will improve your energy by increasing your brain norepinephrine levels, but if you take the antidepressants to improve your norepinephrine synapse, you will raise your blood pressure and raise it significantly. This is why people have to have their blood pressure checked. But when you get enough tyrosine, if you have high blood pressure, the high blood pressure actually goes down to normal. So it helps both things, the mental health and your physical health. Different foods are high in tyrosine. You can see the greens are pretty good sources, mustard greens and lamb's quarters. By the way, lamb's quarters is not the hind leg of a small sheep. It's a green, and it's the green that's highest in calcium. Tomatoes, lima beans, tofu, edamame. Edamame is your green soybeans. Almonds, oats, sunflower seeds, wheat germ. This is why refined wheat is not a good idea. You're not getting your tyrosine or your omega-3. Peanuts are up there near the top in tyrosine, and pumpkin seeds, fortunately, are high in both tryptophan and tyrosine. Notice the competing amino acids. The ones that are best is your tofu, pumpkin seeds, soybeans, and near the top, watermelon and mustard greens. Now, how does this play a role practically? We had a trucker from Texas come to our program with high anxiety. And he, like we recommend for anybody that has anxiety, we took him off of caffeine. Caffeine and anxiety do not go well together. So he's off his caffeine, and he's doing well, day 7, day 8, but now he's thinking about re-entry. And he had a trucking job where he would think he's going to go home at 5 o'clock, and then at 4:30 he gets a call from the boss. Albuquerque's putting in an oil well, and they just had this big metal piece break, and they're needing us to ship it there by morning. Why? They have 100 men involved in drilling this oil well, and if they don't get that piece there, those 100 men get paid for doing nothing all day. And so he's elected to drive that piece all night to get it there the next morning. And he says, I've got to have my caffeine for that. I've got to have my caffeine. I said, no, once you're caffeine free for 14 days, there's something that will work very well to keep you awake at night without giving you the anxiety-producing effects of caffeine. And he says, what's that? I said, I'll give you two choices, watermelon or mustard greens. What do you think he chose? He chose watermelon, and he has it in his truck, and he says it works like a charm. He said, I feel so much better. I feel alert, but I don't feel wired. I don't have that anxiety feeling, but it keeps me awake. But that's a warning. You know, we had that good watermelon here for lunch, but if you're caffeine free and you have watermelon at night, you're not going to want to go to bed because that norepinephrine is going to start kicking in. So the ironic conclusion is don't chow down on high protein sources to boost either tyrosine or tryptophan. Lower protein diets with carbs lead to more amino acids going into the brain. And that's one of the big advantages of a plant-based diet. Emphasize carbohydrate-rich plant sources of nutrition. Of course, high cholesterol, I mentioned, is also an issue. Major depressed patients tend to have significantly higher cholesterol levels than healthy adults. Depressed patients with elevated cholesterol levels have a poorer prognosis for treatment response. That means they don't do well even with medicines unless their cholesterol comes down. Lowering cholesterol improves depression and mood as well as lowers impulsivity. That's a good thing when both things are done. Remember, the antidepressants can improve mood, but what do they do to impulsivity? They worsen it. That's why they have big black box warnings that say that you can go into suicide that first month or so that you're on antidepressants. In fact, one statin manufacturer tried statins for depression, and it actually worked by lowering the cholesterol, and it lowered their impulsivity. Statins did not worsen suicidality, but statins decrease your mitochondria ability. So your energy goes down and you have fatigue. So it's still not clean. The best way of doing this, of course, is doing it with diet. Now, as you can see, cholesterol in foods, tuna, clam, crab, chicken, pork, chicken breast. Notice this, when you scrape the fat and the skin off the chicken, a lot of people think it's cholesterol-free chicken. But it still has 73 milligrams per 3-ounce serving. And most people don't scrape the fat and the skin off their chicken. It has 80 milligrams per 3-ounce serving, and it's higher than pork. A lot of people don't realize that. By the way, where does beef line up? Beef is at 74 milligrams. We should have it on there. I'm not sure why it is there. We do have beef kidney and liver. Notice how high that is. Huge amounts of cholesterol. Shrimp and oyster, also big amounts. Caviar, 500 milligrams. If you see anyone feasting on beef brains, you have to wonder about their intentions. 1 3-ounce serving, 1,697 milligrams of cholesterol. But notice fruits, grains, nuts, and vegetables, no cholesterol. Skim milk has 4 to 5 milligrams, 2% milk 18, whole milk 33 milligrams. Egg white is the only exception in the animal product rule. Egg whites have no cholesterol. But notice the egg yolk at the bottom, 213, loaded with cholesterol. Butter, of course, has it. Ice cream has it as well. Now, we've known since Dr. Taylor did his study in New York that not all cholesterol is the same. Some cholesterol is far more toxic than others. In fact, we can measure this in your bloodstream. It's your oxidized cholesterol that is most predictive of atherosclerosis and blocked arteries. And that's not what they test. They're testing your total cholesterol, your LDL, which LDL normally is oxidized. So it's an idea that it could be, but it may not be. And then HDL, which is your good cholesterol, and triglycerides. So Dr. Taylor was able to feed, well, actually it started out with medical students. I probably should tell you how this came about. As a researcher, it's interesting to me. But these medical students were needing to do a study before they graduated that no one had done. And they looked in the literature and they found out no one had fed rabbits and monkeys pure cholesterol. So they got approval. You can feed rabbits and monkeys pure cholesterol and see what happens. So they did that to rabbits and monkeys, and they all developed heart attacks and strokes in a very short period of time. Medical students did their data, they wrote it up, they were able to graduate. But Dr. Taylor, who had given them the cholesterol, because he was the cholesterol researcher, thought cholesterol's bad, but it shouldn't have been that bad. And he started thinking about the cholesterol he had given him. The lid had been exposed to the air. It had become oxidized and discolored. So he thought, I wonder what will happen if I feed pure cholesterol that's never been exposed to the air, to rabbits and monkeys. So he did that, and no vascular damage with non-oxidized cholesterol. He then realized, okay, people are eating food, and some of that has to be oxidized. Let's see which food is the worst. So then he fed monkeys this food, and 24 hours later, he would count the dead cells in the aorta. It doesn't take long for oxidized cholesterol to do its damage. The most harmful cholesterol, in other words, the most highest oxidized cholesterol, anyone want to guess what it is? It's custards. What are custards? Milk, eggs, and what else? Sugar. You don't want to mix sugar and milk products together. In fact, we should have known that. The book Ministry of Healing by Ellen White said the free use of milk and sugar together should be completely avoided. And she talked about the harm that it produces. What's the most commonly consumed custard in America? It's good old-fashioned ice cream. But if you're eating ice cream that has no dairy in it, that comes from a Champion juicer where you put a frozen banana through, it tastes very sweet, but no oxidized cholesterol. You can have tofu, you can have rice dream, and one of our former board members at Weimar produced 32 flavors of ice cream, one more than Baskin-Robbins, and on the street it was taste tested to be better than ice cream. And he made it out of, anyone want to guess what the base ingredient was for all 32? Not soy, not bananas, not tofu, not cashews, not almonds. It was oats. If you smash oats, it can be very creamy. And so it got taste tested higher, and no oxidized cholesterol, and it's also more naturally sweet, meaning you don't need the sugar or the high sugar in it. By the way, if you're wanting to find out what that ice cream is, you may be able to get it at Whole Foods. Some of the Whole Foods have it. It's called We Can't Say It's Ice Cream. Pancake mix was number 2. Now, what is pancake mix made out of? Flour and eggs and sugar. And remember that egg yolk is loaded with cholesterol. So you're powdering up the egg yolks. This is a powdered batter. And actually, he used Aunt Jemima's pancakes. And that is one of the reasons why in Erica's book, Brighten Up Breakfast, she has 4 pancake recipes with 0 cholesterol in it. And it's good, healthy pancakes. Third most damaging, cheese. And when you powder up the cheese, it's even more oxidized. And it was tied with lard as being the third most damaging. But this also explains something else. Does anyone know what the unhealthiest state is in the nation? These are people that have the most 18-year-olds that have heart attacks. There's people that will land in the emergency room in the hospitals in this state with 17 and 18 having a massive myocardial infarction. Texas, Wisconsin, it's close to Texas, Louisiana. Louisiana, all of that Cajun food. And it was such a serious state that they decided to do a study on infants. And they found that the infants in Louisiana, many of them begin to get the fatty streaks of atherosclerosis in infancy. Now, they're drinking milk or formula. And the way some mothers eat in Louisiana, the cholesterol in their human breast milk is higher than it is in cow's milk. So they were wondering, okay, which ones are getting the fatty streaks? Is it related to the cholesterol of their mother? And so they found out some infants clean vessels. Which one do you think had the clean vessels? The ones consuming human breast milk or cow's milk? You'd think cow's milk because the cholesterol was lower in those Louisiana women that were eating all this fast food. It actually wasn't. It was just the cow's milk that had the fatty streaks. Why not the mother's milk, even though they were unhealthy mothers? The way infants consume mother's milk is directly from the nipple. It's not exposed to the air, and it's not oxidized, and it's not damaging. So the best way for you to drink your cow's milk? Go down to the barn and get it straight. Actually, I had one person take me seriously on that, and I would caution against that because traumatic brain injury might be coming your way if you try that. Vitamin C is an antioxidant that's also healthy. Vitamin C from fruit and vegetable sources is associated with less depressive symptoms in the general population. Adequate intake of vitamin C has been found to improve attention, work productivity, work engagement, and vitality. So antioxidants are very important in mental health, and eating plant foods in their whole form provide great nutritional benefits that exceed that of their component parts. For instance, 1 cup of cooked kale, and by the way, I had that kale salad today. Did any of you guys have that kale salad? 1 cup of kale has 50 milligrams of vitamin C and 13 units of vitamin E. A, C, and E are where your antioxidants are at. So that's a very antioxidant-laden food. However, the antioxidant potential of 1 cup of kale is equal to 800 milligrams of vitamin C plus 1,100 units of vitamin E. This is why it's best not to get your vitamins in supplement bottles, at least your antioxidants. It's best to actually eat the whole plant foods because you'll be able to get a lot more of those antioxidants. So the Human Nutrition Laboratory in Baltimore, Maryland recently did a study on the top 10 antioxidant fruits. And they found that these antioxidants reduce the breakdown of neurotransmitters, increase serotonin and dopamine concentrations. Isoflavone antioxidants are especially good for the mental health of women in menopause. Those are soy-based antioxidants. And antioxidant trials produce improved depression and anxiety scores and quality of life after several weeks of usage. Well, we'll look at the top 10 antioxidant vegetables first. Number 10 is eggplant. Those purple eggplants are loaded. Number 9 is corn. Number 8, onions. We had those today. Number 7, red bell pepper. We had those today as well. Number 6, beets. Beets are loaded with antioxidants. They can also lower your blood pressure. Even taking beet powder can be like taking an antidepressant or antihypertensive medicine. Broccoli's in the top 5. Brussels sprouts are also in the top 5, number 4. By the way, if you don't like Brussels sprouts, come to Weimar Institute. We haven't found a person that does not like Brussels sprouts the way our chef makes them. Number 3, spinach. Number 2, kale. What's number 1? Number 1 is indeed garlic. And that's the advantage of being married to a Romanian like I am. Every entree starts out with 4 cloves of garlic. The top 10 antioxidant fruits. Number 10 is grapefruit. Number 9, kiwi. Number 8, cherries. Number 7, red grapes. Number 6, oranges, loaded with antioxidants. This is a very humble fruit. People don't rate it very high, but it's high on the antioxidant list. It gets into the top 5, plums. And all in the top 4 are berries. Raspberries, strawberries, blackberries are number 2, and blueberries are number 1. Zinc is an effective antidepressant alone or in addition to SSRI and tricyclic medications. 2 weeks of zinc supplementation increases the receptors for serotonin. Now, as I mentioned, your pharmaceuticals won't do this, but zinc will. And it can also improve the attention deficit hyperactivity disorder symptoms. Foods high in zinc, sunflower seeds, pecans. We had some pecans today, wonderful. Sesame seeds, cashews, pine nuts. Wild rice is high in zinc, but pumpkin seeds are up there very high. By the way, hemp seeds are also the same as pumpkin seeds in 3 milligrams. And zinc, by the way, zinc is so potent that the antidepressant medicines that are coming out, guess what they're doing? They're giving you an SSRI and they're putting zinc with it because they know it'll increase the receptors. And it's not the pharmaceutical part. You can get zinc anywhere. That's the natural part that will be helpful. Magnesium also increases brain serotonin levels. It can improve depression and anxiety in just 2 weeks of usage. 500 milligrams 4 times daily of elemental magnesium per day, or 248 milligrams of elemental magnesium a day will make a big difference. It helps with methylation. That means it's producing the final step of 3 different neurotransmitters, and also improves GABA-aminobutyric acid, which is a neuroinhibitory neurotransmitter that helps you to not be as stressed out. Foods high in magnesium: soy, whole grain cereal, peanuts, okra, Brazil nuts, black beans, Swiss chard, and spinach are up there very high on the list. You might have heard of the keto diet or the ketosis diet, and these other diets, paleo diet, Atkins diet, but as far as a randomized controlled trial, there's only one diet that's been shown to improve depression and anxiety in a randomized prospective controlled trial. That's known as the gold standard of scientific studies. And it's a whole food, plant-based diet. The reason for it is no arachidonic acid, no cholesterol, high in antioxidants, and better tryptophan and tyrosine uptake, to name just a few of those. However, ketosis can be helpful. Intermittent fasting reduces damaging oxidative stress in the brain and promotes production of new brain cells. It also enhances brain-derived neurotrophic factor. BDNF is a brain fertilizer. Excess calories reduce synaptic plasticity, making cells more vulnerable to free radical formation. Moderate caloric restriction protects the brain by reducing oxidative damage. Ketogenesis enhances the body's defenses against oxidative and metabolic stress. It initiates the removal or repair of damaged molecules. It carries over into the non-fasting period and improves glucose regulation. It increases stress resistance and suppresses inflammation. It also improves mental and physical performance. This is why periodic fasting is actually a good thing for your brain. So experiencing the benefits of ketosis without adversely affecting the brain by a low-carb diet is by eating breakfast but not eating supper. A lot of people try it the other way by skipping breakfast, but skipping breakfast has been shown to increase your risk of depression, decrease happiness, cause more loneliness and sleep problems, and lower academic achievement, as well as it being associated with risky behaviors. While eating a balanced breakfast lowers levels of depression and stress, better cognitive performance, and better scholastic scores. Your GPA is higher and your creativity goes up with your frontal lobe. So the way of getting that ketosis, the BDNF up, is through a 17-hour fast. So this is what we model, not for everybody, but the people that are best modeled for this. We will actually feed them a good breakfast and a good lunch, and then they'll fast from 2 p.m. They won't have any food intake from 2 p.m. until 7 a.m. the next day. And that's a 17-hour fast. And at first, they'll feel famished because they're used to eating a lot in the evening. And in a week, they're not famished at all. And by 10 days, they're not even hungry in the evening. Their body's totally adjusted to the ketosis, and ketosis will prevent you from being hungry. But it improves their ability for their brain to change quicker. It makes the neuroplasticity very positive. There's also indication that it will lengthen your telomeres, and that is related to longevity. By the way, we had an individual come about a month ago. I invited him on special invitation to speak at our divine worship service. His name is Dr. John Scharfenberg, and he is 100 years old. He drove up in his red sports car, walked uphill. You can't walk on flat surfaces at Weimar. It's in the mountains. So he's walking uphill. I didn't know he was coming behind me, and he's saying, "Kneel, kneel," and he's walking with no cane, no walker or anything, and 100 years of old. And he gave a great message on medical missionary work and the spirit of prophecy. You can still see it online, as well as where we're going in this world. And then in the afternoon, he gave a nutrition lecture. He's an MD who's also a Harvard-trained nutritionist on how to live to 100. But he gave some of his hints as to why he is so healthy at 100. He said he was very intentional in doing a lot of outdoor labor. He loved gardening. He loved being outside. He loved keeping his 37-acre ranch up. He would be using chainsaws. He'd be out there getting all that infrared light. And he said the other thing he was very religious about was never eating suppers. He would eat a 2-meal-a-day program and do that evening fast. And he said, my brothers, they ate pretty much similarly to me. We were all on a plant-based diet, but they died in their mid to late 80s, and I'm still going at 100. And he says the two different things was not eating in the evening and being intentionally outdoors a lot more. Folate and B12 deficiency. The common mediator of the effects of B12 and folate deficiency is reduced S-adenosylmethionine. That's sometimes a supplement we give for those that are under methylators, which can alleviate depression significantly. High sources of folate include spinach, mustard greens, asparagus, black beans, pinto beans, and notice lentils are up there tied with the top with black-eyed peas, also very high. Regarding nutrition and mental health, this was a prestigious psychiatric peer-reviewed journal from Europe called Lancet Psychiatry. They did a review article on nutrition and mental health, and here's what they stated after stating about 150 to 200 studies that have been recently done. They said, now is the time for the recognition of the importance of nutrition and nutrient supplementation in psychiatry. In fact, they go on to say nutritional medicine should now be considered as a what? Mainstream element of psychiatric practice. So if your doctor is prescribing your antidepressants is not asking you about nutrition or not talking about nutrition, they are not up to date. They are not mainstream. And you may want to find someone who can be mainstream to help you in this area. The last study I'll quote comes from southern New Zealand. They asked the question, what diet is most associated with eudaimonia? Does anyone know what eudaimonia means? Eudaimonia is your ability to achieve your full life satisfaction. In other words, the most satisfied people with their life. And it's also called the realization of one's full potential. So they looked at diet and they found that eudaimonia peaks when consuming 7.2 servings of fruit per day and 8.2 servings of vegetables a day. That's over 15 servings of fruits and vegetables. So your happiness continues until you go up to that point. If you go over that point, then it flatlines. It doesn't get worse, but it doesn't get better. In several studies, individuals eating a plant-based diet experience a significant increase in physical function, general health, vitality, and emotional well-being, as well as a decrease in depression, anxiety, and fatigue. And they state lifestyle interventions have an increasingly apparent role in physical and mental health. And among the most effective of these is the use of a what? Plant-based diet. And so the evidence is clear. If we change our diet to have these types of things in it on a regular basis, it will actually increase our happiness and satisfaction in life. So I would encourage you, don't wait for depression or anxiety complications to come into your life. Get on the best nutrition and lifestyle program now that leads to the best pathway to a healthy mind, and make the choices that will positively impact your life long term. If you want some help with this, we have a community-based program, the Nedley Depression and Anxiety Recovery Program. It's very inexpensive. They have trained facilitators and directors that can help you through this. I know there's other places in Georgia that run it. I don't know if the Macon Church runs this, but if they do, let me know. Or you could get people trained to do that. You can become a certified health coach and help your community in this area. We also have an online one that's very inexpensive as well. Those are mental health education-based programs, and the studies show going through these mental health education programs is superior to any traditional care for psychiatric issues. But if you want the full therapeutic program where we can do all the epigenetic analysis and all of the thought analysis and all of those things to work on that, then that would be the residential lifestyle program. So I'll open it up for questions at this point, and we'll get a roving microphone and see if we can answer your questions here for the next few minutes or so. So you don't necessarily need to write them down. You can also raise your hand. And I think we have some people with a roving microphone. I see a hand way in the back there. And if someone with the microphone can head to the back, and we will
Dr. Nedley.
hear your question. Oh, we have someone with a microphone right there.
Yes.
All right. Stand up so I can see you. I want to. Okay, there you go. Thank you.
Okay, we purchased several copies of Proof Positive a few years back. And it's just a wealth of information, and you have said that it's being revamped. Any idea when the new edition will be out?
It should be out by Christmas of this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All right.
So we actually have it almost completed.
Wonderful.
And there's just a few little cleanup things we need to do to get that over.
Let me just say, if you don't have a copy of Proof Positive, get the revamped edition as well. It's just tremendous.
It's hard to get the other edition. We actually, it went out of printing, and because we were going to come out with a new one, we didn't. And so you can get Proof Positive, but you've got to pay about $200 on Amazon for it. And if you get a signed copy, you can get it for about $400. This new one will be a lot cheaper, and it'll be newer information.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Is your program working with the VA for the prevention of suicide in our veterans?
Okay, great question. So the VA is aware of our program. By the way, there are 20 suicides a day in veterans in this country, out of the 132 suicides a day. So veterans make up a big percentage. And by the way, in the military, since 2000, more people have died from suicide than from combat in our military. And so suicide is a major issue in our military as well. The Veterans has looked at our program, And they looked at it because some people were saying, well, it's Christian-based. And so they actually came out with their attorney looking at it, and they said it is suitable for veterans because the spiritual aspect is not proselytizing, it's being used to help their depression and anxiety. Now, having said that, we also, by request of the mayor of Rochester, Minnesota, where the Mayo Clinic is at, the mayor of Rochester, Minnesota has gone through our community program and loves it and wants to send all of her employees at Rochester, including the policemen and firemen, through our program. But when she requires it, she was fearful of the Christian-based part, that the ACLU would come after her. And so she requested that we have a government-friendly version. And so we're just coming out with that government-friendly version, and that could be used by cities and governments. There's even judges talking about mandating it for a reduced sentence in some of their drug court things and that sort of aspect. And so I think that government-friendly version would be helpful as well. Having said that as well, we've also had veterans go through our residential program with very great success, but right now the veterans will pay a little bit for that, but not for the whole thing. They really should because of all those issues, but they will subsidize it a little bit for the therapeutic program. Okay, question here.
Yes, someone submitted this question. They said, I eat an almost vegan diet, but have high cholesterol still. What can I do?
Okay, yeah, great question. And so we often see this, and it's not just cholesterol in the diet that raises your cholesterol. That will raise it, but it's also your P to S ratio of your diet. P to S ratio is polyunsaturated to saturated. So if I have a vat of saturated fat on this side of the podium and another vat of polyunsaturated on this side, how will you be able to tell the difference by looking? Anyone know? The saturated fat is going to be what at room temperature? Solid at room temperature. The polyunsaturated will be liquid. And the more solid the fat, the more it increases your own liver's production of cholesterol. We don't need any cholesterol in our diet because our livers make all that we need. But we can train our livers to make a lot more through through eating saturated fat. What are some of the saturated fat things that will dramatically raise a vegan's cholesterol? Coconut oil. Coconut oil will raise it as much as beef will raise it, as much as cheese will raise it. Palm oil will also raise it significantly. And there are other oils that also will raise your cholesterol. All the nuts will actually raise your cholesterol a little bit, except for 5 nuts, which lower the cholesterol. We had this discussion at our table today because one of the individuals at our table actually grows one of the nuts that lowers cholesterol. What are the 5 nuts? Black walnuts, English walnuts, pecans, hickory nuts, and almonds. All the rest will raise it. So if you look at your P to S ratios, you want to have a P to S ratio greater than 2. If you look at your P to S ratio, just about every vegan that comes to me complaining that their cholesterol is too high and they think it's their genetics will get their cholesterol down to an ideal range just by getting rid of all of the saturated fat in their diet and replacing it with polyunsaturated fat. And it's amazing. It'll come down within 6 weeks to a very nice level. Now, 1 in 400 still might need some help. 1 in 400 do have a bad gene that will need more than that, more than just diet alone. But 99% of people are not going to need to be on a medicine to control it. They can control it with a careful diet. All right, next question. One back in the back again.
Dr. Nedley, first of all, I'd like to thank you for the time you've spent with us last night and today. It's been wonderful. You might think my question is a little bizarre, but I see I love pumpkin seeds. And I see on your chart for zinc that pumpkin seeds was on the chart. But if you look at the I always look at the source of products and where they're manufactured. It's just a thing with me, I guess. But a lot of pumpkin seeds come out of China. I was wondering if that is okay. Should we be concerned with that, or?
I would be more concerned about your peanuts from China than your pumpkin seeds from China.
Okay.
And the reason being is when the peanuts come from third world countries, they are often laid out there in the open and in a packed environment where a fungus develops called aflatoxin. And this is one of the advantages, I think, of Georgia peanuts versus some of the peanuts that get imported. And aflatoxin can actually cause cancer. Pumpkin seeds, we would of course like them organic. You can have even more nutrients when they're organic. But even the non-organic pumpkin seeds are very healthy. And so I am not aware of significant issues of the pumpkin seeds from China, but I probably would make sure that they're clean, before consumption. But yes, thank you very much. Question, I think, here.
Yes, Dr. Nedley, thank you so much for coming. I have really been blessed by this program, and I am really so excited about it because I need it for one of my close family members. And my question to you, you said that your book is expensive on Amazon. So how else can we get it that's not as expensive? And what is one of your first books that you would refer to someone if they've never ordered your book? Because I want to get one of your books.
Okay, so the original Proof Positive is out of print. And that's why it's so expensive. People are reselling theirs and doing it to make money. And so, if people would have bought a number of Proof Positives when it came out, they could have become very wealthy today and just reselling them. And we decided not to reprint because we were coming out with a new version. However, it may have been a mistake for us not to reprint because I didn't take into factor that I'm also the president of Weimar University. I'm also running all sorts of other things, and so it took me a lot longer to get this project done. It is going to be done this year. We're almost completed with it. And so I don't know how to make it cheaper for the old version, but when the new version comes out, we're going to have a big printing, and we're going to have it far less expensive. So that will be doable. So would I recommend Proof Positive as the book for you? If it's more physical health oriented, most definitely. If you're thinking in regards to the things that you've heard this weekend, I would probably recommend The Lost Art of Thinking or Depression: The Way Out. But The Lost Art of Thinking will go into those distortions. Today we covered only 4 of the 10 distortions, so you'll get a lot more information on those 10 different ways of distorted thinking. Plus, there's the biggest chapter is on nutrition in the brain, so you'll learn even a lot more than what we mentioned here on nutrition. Plus, we have chapters on sleep and music and all sorts of different healthy aspects of optimizing our brain. Okay, who is next?
Right
yes.
here. Just so you know, my daughter has brain cancer, glioblastoma. We took her to Duke University Hospital, and the guru of that hospital and the cancer center agrees 100% with what you're saying, because we went through this whole thing with them about eating and the right foods, and we asked him point blank, do you support this kind of lifestyle? And he says, absolutely. So I thought it'd be important for you to know and understand that. Second thing is organic food. How do you really tell if it's organic or not, or can you? And can you continue eating regular foods, or should you go all organic?
Okay, great question. So these studies on, for instance, eudaimonia, and these studies that we used in our analysis today, Those were all done on commercially grown fruits and vegetables in a non-organic way. So one of the things that concerns me is because people think that fruits and vegetables that are non-organic are actually harmful, that they'll actually stay away from any fruits and vegetables unless they're organic. And I wouldn't recommend that, because even the non-organic ones are healthy. They're healthier than other choices of what we'll have. In fact, even the US Congress talked about this a few years ago. The people with the highest pesticides in their bloodstream are actually meat eaters and dairy consumers, because there's a lot more pesticides in meat and dairy than there is in non-organically grown fruits and vegetables. And so, of course, that's because they're higher up on the food chain and all that sort of thing. But if you can find organic, there are advantages. Organic has more antioxidants, more bioflavonoids. Why do they have more antioxidants? It's because the antioxidants in the fruits and vegetables are built up for them when they are resisting disease in their own environment. So if we're killing off all the disease-producing things, the vegetables and fruits don't have to build up as much antioxidants because they don't have to really be fighting the disease. We're fighting it for them. And so that's the advantage of organic, is that we get more antioxidants per gram of consumption of those fruits and vegetables. And of course, we also get less pesticides, which would obviously be advantageous as well. So, you know, when I go through Costco and I see organically grown blueberries, you know, I get those. Or, you know, if we can find them, you know, wherever you can find them that's healthy and abundant. Now, another thing to notice on fruits and vegetables, a lot of people aren't aware of this, it's not just organic, it's the taste as well. Studies show, you know, this is why garden-grown tomatoes, you know, they're so much better. Why are they so much better? Studies show that the better the taste of the fruits and vegetables, the higher antioxidant load they have. And so if you have organic that's all shriveled and not very tasty at all, chances are that may not be any better than your non-organic ones that are tastier there as well. But if you can get organic that and tasty, you can't beat that aspect. Now, how can you know? You asked the question, how can you know organic? We have to trust the government rules in regards to that. If they say it's organic, it's got to be organic, and that means that you didn't use any pesticides. And, you know, organically grown fruits and vegetables, you have to be very particular about the soil. So you have to be a doctor of the soil to do this well. And so if it says organic, it should be organic. Now at Weimar, we not only have an organic farm at Weimar, we have a big farm at Weimar, but it's also a veganic farm. What is a veganic farm? That means we use no animal products for manure or those sorts of things in order to grow the fruits and vegetables. So why is that a concern? Because you can get organic apples that actually have toxigenic E. coli in them. Why is that? They were grown organically, but they were grown on a cow farm, and the apple dropped into a cow pie, and it was harvested and put in the stack, and then we got toxigenic E. coli from the cow manure contaminating the apple. And so if you have a veganic farm, then you don't have to worry about that type of contamination. So that's organic plus. All right, so yeah, I'll let the microphone people tell us. So if you're raising the microphone, go ahead and stand up and talk. Oh, is there someone else?
Yeah,
Go
I've
ahead.
actually got several questions here. These came from the box. So
Okay.
I don't know how many. There's probably about 10 here. I don't know if you want me to ask 2 or 3 or how you want to do that. Or okay. Maybe I'll just ask you one and then see if someone else and then come back to me.
Okay, sure.
But this one's, I'm sorry. This one is about essential trimmers. What suggestion do you have for essential trimmers? I am taking, I think this is Primidon, Primidon?
Yeah, so essential tremors are tremors that are not due to Parkinson's. Essential tremors are a genetic condition, and that genetic condition tends to manifest itself as you age. And so it tends to be where you're having a tremor, picking up a glass and putting it there. A Parkinsonian tremor will be a tremor at rest, but when you try to do something with your hand, the tremor goes away. With Parkinson's, and so it's different than the essential tremor. And essential tremor is not life-threatening like the Parkinsonian tremors are. Parkinson's disease can shorten your life, where essential tremor doesn't seem to do that. But essential tremor can be helped by brewer's yeast flakes, particularly some B vitamins. We actually have a supplement that lowers norepinephrine levels. One of the treatments for it that's even better than primidone or these types of medicines that are kind of bordering on barbiturates, more sedatives, is the beta blocker propranolol. Propranolol can really help essential tremors. But if you are getting your norepinephrine down and your dopamine level up, that can also help. And so there's a supplement that we utilize called Brain that has zinc plus B vitamins that lower norepinephrine and raise dopamine. It could even help with depression. That's been helpful for essential tremors. And then brewer's yeast flakes, the equivalent of quite a bit, 3 tablespoons of brewer's yeast flakes a day can also help essential tremor in some individuals. All right, we'll go to the next question. Oh, by the way, I should mention exercise as well. Some people have to with essential tremor have to exercise quite a bit, but we've had individuals that have a bad essential tremor, and if they're able to aggressively exercise for as much as 2 hours a day, they won't have any tremor whatsoever. And so that's something that could help out with some good, vigorous exercise in the morning, and that's by raising those dopamine levels that exercise is working. Okay, question.
Question. Did you say coconut oil would increase your cholesterol?
Yes.
Could you explain a little bit further for us?
Yes, coconut oil is saturated oil. It's saturated fat. And so if I would show you the Keys equation, we have this in our book, Proof Positive. Ansel Keys was the father of cholesterol research, and he said, you tell me what you're eating and I will tell you what your cholesterol is. And with frightening accuracy, he was able to predict people's cholesterol. But it's based on the P to S ratio of what they're eating, plus the amount of cholesterol in their diet. And the S will dramatically raise your cholesterol. It has a 2 in front of that on the equation and a 1.26 in front of that. So saturated fat makes your liver produce a lot more cholesterol. And coconut oil is virtually all saturated, hardly any non-saturated fat in coconut oil and also in palm oil, although palm oil has less saturated fat than coconut oil. So we have a lot of people, I know Dr. Oz recommends it. Of course, he's an owner of a coconut oil manufacturing place as well. But, Dr. Oz tries to really advertise it. So we've had a lot of vegans come to our program, and they're putting coconut oil on their salad. They're putting coconut oil in all sorts of things. And they'll come in with super high cholesterols and issues with their high cholesterol. So we want to have the saturated fat low and the polyunsaturated at least twice as much to start lowering the cholesterol and tipping it in that balance. All right. Yes, back to you.
I hope it's still okay to put coconut oil on your skin, though. Is that?
Yeah, you could put it on your skin, or you can put coconut strips in certain things. You know, the coconut itself doesn't have much oil in it. Right. And so it's when we take the oil away from the coconut that we're going to have the largest issue. Okay.
This person writes in about a 7-year addiction to kratom.
Oh, yeah.
Kratom.
Yeah, kratom.
What is the danger and what is the best way to recover?
Yeah, so kratom is a plant substance that's opioid-like. So people are taking it, as a painkiller And of course, it can set up a cycle of addiction, can make you feel calm on the outset and a little bit better, just like heroin can for the heroin addict. But it is doing it at the expense of suppressing the frontal lobe of the brain and your ability to even think cognitively and get rid of irrational thoughts. And so we have a number of people that come to our program on kratom. Just like if they're on opioids or benzos, our goal is to get them off the kratom and help the anxiety without it. And our success rate is very high in being able to do that. But normally they have to, if they're on kratom routinely for years, they're normally not able to get off it on their own unless they come to a program like ours. Yes, do we have the roving mic? If someone has the mic, stand up and, yes, thank you.
Somebody turned it off, just turn it, yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
The first, plant-based eating or plant-based diet in terms of cooking with oil, right or wrong. I eat kale raw. I've been told that I shouldn't because it doesn't digest well. And I'd like to also know about eating mushrooms. I've also been told that we shouldn't eat mushrooms because I guess they come from fungi so can you elaborate on that for me, please?
Okay. So some of the more questionable things, let's take them in reverse order. Mushrooms, for most people, are going to be okay. They're not going to increase your risk of fungal infection or anything like that. They can have protein and they can have some adequate positive nutrients in edible mushrooms. We, of course, would avoid non-edible mushrooms, as those can be very lethal. But there are some individuals where we tell them to avoid mushrooms, and that's when they have a genetic condition that cannot handle copper. Mushrooms are high in copper, and so copper is an essential nutrient. We need it in small amounts, but if they have low ceruloplasmin, like they have Wilson's disease or another disease where they have low ceruloplasmin, the mushrooms will cause their free copper to go high, and that can cause issues with too much norepinephrine, so it can fuel anxiety, and not enough dopamine, so it actually makes you to not enjoy the usual activities of life. And so for those individuals, we'll tell them to avoid high copper foods, which include seafood. Anything from the ocean is high in copper. The ocean is loaded with copper. And of course, we would have them avoid mushrooms and some other high copper foods. The other question was on raw versus cooked in regards to things like kale and spinach. So if we eat raw greens, we actually get more vitamin C. By cooking it, we destroy about half of the vitamin C, but we also get more fiber and a little less nutrient absorption in the raw, because some of that fiber actually blocks the nutrients from being absorbed. So I don't think you need to have a hard and fast rule of no raw kale or only cooked kale either. There's advantages of having it either way. And so having cooked kale, you'll actually get more beta carotene absorption, for instance, and you'll get some advantages. In general, it's best to have about half of our food cooked and the other half to be raw. Most people aren't high enough in the raw, and they don't get as many antioxidants that way. And then the first one, there was 3. Oh yes, what about oil? What about cooking with oil? Now, there are oils naturally in foods, and we don't tell you to avoid those foods. There are some plant-based advocators, Dr. Ornish is one of them, that recommends only a 10% fat diet. He won't recommend any nuts at all or anything like that. But nuts are actually healthy for us, and particularly those nuts that I just mentioned. They're very healthy for us, and they actually lower the risk of a number of different diseases. So in general, we don't need a very low-fat diet, but we need lower than what the typical American is on, which is about 40% of their diet being fat, and it's better to have it about 25% fat. So in regards to oil and cooking, one of the concerns is that you'll get trans fats by cooking, particularly the polyunsaturated oils. By the way, that's one of the reasons Dr. Oz recommends coconut oil, because it's already saturated. If you fry it, you can't get any trans fats out of it. And so that's his claim to fame in regards to coconut oil, and I'll agree with that. But even though you can't get any trans fats, doesn't mean it's not a harmful oil for your cholesterol. And so olive oil is monounsaturated, so it's very hard to get a trans fat out of olive oil. But some of the other polyunsaturated fat oils, if you're cooking at a high amount or high temperature cooking, you could get some trans, and you will get trans if you cook it under pressure. So those pressure cooking aspects, you are going to get more trans fats. So in general, it's healthier not to cook with oil, but if you're cooking with cold pressed virgin olive oil or using some of that even on your salad, I don't think that's really a concern in small amounts. All right, yes, question back there.
Okay, this I believe is referring to when you mentioned a study that took place 6 weeks of screen time.
Yes.
And the question is, what do you mean by the screen time? Does that mean no phone at all, or just no apps and social media?
Okay, that does not mean no phone at all. In fact, you could get your old flip phone and get one of those, or you could get something called a Gab phone. That's something that's been advertised, and a lot of people are getting that. The Gab phone has no apps. It's not hooked up to the internet. You can make calls and you can do a calculator, and for kids, it doesn't make them feel inferior, because the Gab phone actually does have a screen on it, and it looks like a regular phone if they're there in school and they're being ridiculed because they're not as cool as the other kids that have these these smartphones. And so it looks like that, but it doesn't have access to any of that sort of thing. So those would be potential options during the electronic fast.
Okay, another question. How do you complete a hydrotherapy session at home in terms of submerging in a bathtub? Do you need 2 bathtubs?
It's really hard to do it at home. So how we recommend it at home is through contrast showers. And so you get yourself toasty warm, and then you turn it over to full cold. And in Georgia, it's not that cold. In comparison to Northern California, the far north you go, the colder it gets. It's usually through the shower, and 3 minutes of hot and 1 minute of cold. Now, having said that, we've had participants go through our program. We actually have a factory grade cold tank. Now, we also have one where we can regulate the temperature ourselves, as I mentioned with the ice, but not too far away from Weimar, California, in Lincoln, California. Do you remember the name of the company? It's called Plunge, the Polar Plunge. And so you can actually set the temperature, 38 degrees or 44 degrees. And you can get from your hot tub into this Polar Plunge. And it's actually very stimulating to do that. And so for those who wanted the full effect without doing shower, you could buy the user version of Polar Plunge. All right, any other questions, or should we have, okay, there we have one here, yes. Go ahead. Yes.
Another food question. Can we eat kiwi?
Yes, yeah, kiwi is actually a high antioxidant vegetable. Was it not mentioned in the top 10 there? Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, so kiwi is a good. Now there's a kiwi bird in New Zealand that I would recommend not eating. In fact, that's how the kiwis, and the New Zealand people are called kiwis. They're actually called that because of the bird. And that bird actually doesn't fly, I don't think. It's one of those ground birds. But yeah, the kiwi fruit itself is a good antioxidant. All right, another written question maybe? Oh, we have another oral question. Go ahead.
Okay, I have a question about coconut palm sugar. I know the coconut oil should not be consumed. How is it using coconut palm sugar? Should we stay away from that as well?
It sounds like I would stay away from it. I'm not sure I know what coconut palm sugar is, but I imagine it has coconut oil and palm oil and sugar. That's what it sounds like to me anyways. So yeah, I would not recommend that. All right.
Okay. Here's another question. When weightlifting, they tell us to eat lots of protein, but you said higher carbs, lower protein. How much is too much protein? Will you still see results with lower protein?
So yeah, one of the biggest fallacies in all of weightlifting is that you have to have high protein. You have to have adequate protein, but not high protein. And unfortunately, my own son fell for that trap. My oldest son is a big weightlifter, and he's never entered a weightlifting competition. He did not win. He was reading these bodybuilding magazines and these protein supplements and all of this. But he started to have issues. He started to have hypertension. He started to have some kidney issues. And he went through Weimar before I was teaching principles of health. And apparently they didn't teach him about excess protein. One of the chapters in Proof Positive that's just been recommended is the great meat and protein myth. And so we talk about adequate protein versus too high a protein. Too high a protein will leach calcium from your bones. It'll cause hypertension. It'll cause kidney failure. And his brother, my oldest son, who is the bodybuilder, he's a physical therapist. My second oldest son is a physician. And when he was rotating in medical school, he was seeing these bodybuilders on dialysis. And he called up his brother and he said, "Joel, you've got to quit this. You can be bodybuilding and be on dialysis with all this extra protein, and I'm seeing 40 and 50-year-old men here on dialysis." And he says, "You've got to get off all that stuff." So I told Joel to also read our chapter on great meat and protein myths. So he gave up all protein supplements. He's plant-based. So he plant-based, all protein supplements. He didn't lose 1 pound of weightlifting ability. Still just as strong as he always was. And that's when he realized, wow, I was doing all this for nothing. I was just spending lots of money, and I didn't even need that. And you can get adequate protein. How much protein? It's 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. And you don't need any more than that. That's the most you need for weightlifting. And if you're not a weightlifter, you only need half that amount. So we actually don't need a whole lot of protein. And all 8 essential amino acids are in all of those vegetables there. So even if you're just eating kale all day long, you'll still get 8 essential amino acids if you're eating enough to maintain your weight. Any vegetable that you eat to maintain your weight has adequate protein. Not true with fruit.
Very good, very good. Thank you so much. This question here says, do you have a nurse practitioner program at your university?
Well, we're talking about starting a nurse practitioner program. We don't have one at this point in time. But we do have the ability for nurse practitioners to rotate in their clinical aspects if it's approved by their university. And so we do have nurse practitioner students who have done rotations with me as part of their clinicals.
What fruits would you recommend for anemia, and how does it affect mental health?
Okay. So anemia can affect mental health, particularly if it's associated with iron deficiency anemia. And so we're measuring everyone's iron levels, including their iron body storage when they come in. And if you are low in iron, there's 4 different iron-dependent neurotransmitters: GABA, norepinephrine, dopamine, and serotonin. And so it'll affect all 4 of those levels if you don't have adequate iron. Now, you can get too much iron, Too much iron is a pro-oxidant, can be an issue, but we need adequate amounts of iron. And so what foods are going to be high in iron naturally? Actually, your whole wheat is an excellent source of iron. Now, when we eat refined bread, it will say enriched white flour. How much have they enriched it? They took out the wheat germ, which had all the iron, and they put 20% of the iron back in. I don't know about you, but if someone took $100 away from me and then gave me $20 back, I would not say I had been enriched. And so you don't want to get it from refined grains or processed grains. You want to get it from the whole grains. Tofu is also an excellent source of iron. Kidney beans are a good source of iron. Beets are a good source of iron, as is spinach. And these green vegetables are excellent sources of iron. And so you can get adequate amounts of iron easily by those plant-based foods, and that can help prevent some of the iron deficiency. All right. Next.
Is a starch-based diet the same as a plant-based diet?
I would say that it can be. I mean, you can, a starch-based diet can be a plant-based diet, but you can also have a plant-based diet that is more of a ketosis diet that's not necessarily high in starches. And so, yeah, there's a lot of different variety that can come in regards to a plant-based diet. But a starch-based diet normally is actually a pretty healthy diet as long as we don't go too low in the fat. It's going to be an issue if we get starches with very low fat. All right, I think I'm going to, we're at the, near the end, and so we'll get another, what should we say, another 2 or 3? Okay, so no more than 3 questions. Go ahead.
Any recommendations for Parkinson's disease?
Parkinson's disease is a disease of toxicity. So the toxins actually affected the brainstem, and it diminished the ability to make dopamine, or it eliminated the ability to make dopamine. Now, I can tell you a story. We had a patient who was very much wanting in our depression recovery program. She was from the Baltimore area. She was seen by a Johns Hopkins neurologist, and our girls did not accept her in the program. Why didn't they accept her in the program? She had advanced Parkinson's. She was wheelchair bound. She could not dress herself. She even had trouble feeding herself with her advanced Parkinson's, and that's taking a seat away from someone who could exercise and do things like that. So since we have limited seats, not everybody gets accepted that comes to the program. And so her husband called and said, "You need to check with Dr. Nedley. I think he'll be more sympathetic." And so she checked with me, and she was following the right protocol. And I reminded her, I said, we don't have 24/7 nursing care. We can't feed her, we can't dress her, and those sorts of things. Well, he took advantage of that statement and said, "I will come with her, I will feed her, I will dress her, I will do all the nursing things for her. Please let her in this program." Well, our program was filled up at this point, but then her neurologist calls me and says, "Dr. Nedley, please let my patient into your program. I know she's got Parkinson's, I'm treating that, but we know that a lot of her issues are depression, and if we can help her depression, I think it'll help her Parkinson's some." And so I told, after I got that call from the doctor, I told our screeners to put her at the top of the list for cancellations. Well, Thursday is when our program normally starts, and we had no cancellations till Thursday morning. Thursday morning, we had a cancellation, so since she was on the top of the list, she was called, and by Thursday afternoon, she's being wheeled with her wheelchair into Weimar University for the depression program. And it happened so quickly, our staff over there hadn't had a chance to know about it, and so they're getting pretty upset as to why did this wheelchair patient just come for our depression and anxiety recovery program. So I'm having to see her right away, and the husband's there, and he says, "Please let her stay. I will feed her, I will dress her, I do all those things." So what did I do? First thing I did is I put her on a supplement called L-tyrosine. We just talked about tyrosine. Tyrosine turns into dopamine. And I said, at least the cells that will make dopamine will have more of the substrate. So let's give you 2 grams 3 times a day of L-tyrosine and see if that'll help. And plus I gave her a number of other things to be able to do. And her husband still stayed with the thing that he was going to feed her and dress her. Well, the next morning, he did dress her, but it's now time to go to the cafeteria. And she's in this wheelchair, and we had her in the first floor because there aren't stairs. You have to go uphill to the cafeteria. But as soon as he gets outside the door, she says, "Stop the wheelchair." He said, and so he obeyed her, and he put the brakes on as well. She said, "Put the brakes on." And then she gets up, and she starts walking on her own power to the cafeteria. Amen. And her husband is saying, "No, honey, no, you're going to fall. Don't do that." And she says, "Get out of my way." So, of course, we didn't cure her Parkinson's, but we did help her to do better, and her depression cleared, and her other symptoms also got a lot better. In fact, they write us a thank you note they used to do it every 6 months. Now it's about every year that we let her into that program and how her life was changed. So that's one of the natural things that we could do. Another one is that supplement brain. By getting the copper down, we're able to make more dopamine. And so getting that copper down through zinc and the B vitamins can also be helpful.
Amen. What kind of questions can you ask yourself to become more self-aware?
Questions to become more self-aware. Well, that is one simple question is, am I feeling the way I want to feel? If you are not feeling the way you want to feel, by definition, you are having a problem with self-awareness and accurate thinking. Now, sometimes you may not want to feel great because you want to be motivated to do something in order to intervene on someone else's behalf or your own behalf. But if you're not feeling the way you want to feel, if you ask yourself the question, is this thought that I'm having, is it true, and is it true all the time? That would be a good question to ask yourself. And then ask yourself, is there any evidence out there that this may not be true? And that can help you to be more aware.
Okay, last question. How would you help someone who is trying to commit suicide if they are on the other side of the world and won't respond to your calls, but they do read your texts?
So what I would say to that, and we've had a lot of questions like that. If this is a friend of yours, remember you are not their therapist or their trained person. And if they are actively suicidal, that means that they are wanting to commit suicide and they have a means and a plan. You actually don't need to talk to them. You need to call the law enforcement and get them to find them, and then get them to a safe place where they can at least be committed in some belly of a fish for 3 days. That will help them tremendously. They'll be upset at you at first, but they'll thank you on the other side for protecting them. But if they're passively suicidal, those are some of the questions we asked earlier today. What's preventing you from doing it? Use some of their own reasoning, and then try to get them into a program, either a mental health education program or preferably a therapeutic program, so those thoughts never come up again, and so they don't have to be at risk and feel that they're at risk again. All right, well, it's been a very, we've enjoyed being here in Macon, Georgia, and it's nice that you're inquisitive and asking all these questions, and I certainly wish you the best of health of body, mind, and soul. Thank you.
I just want to thank personally Dr. Nedley for coming and being here with us, and to provide us with this kind of information is so critical to our lives. So I've decided that We're just coming back home with you.
That's great. You're all invited.
But I appreciate this. I would like to pray for you and your family.
Thank you.
Let's do that. Our God and our Father, I thank you so much for the experience of this weekend. Oh God, I pray that you will be with the Nedley family. Watch over them, Lord. Protect them. Give them safety as they fly or drive or whatever they're doing. Oh God, may the gospel permeate their program so that they will not only be well, but they will be well with Jesus. So Lord, continue to be with us. We love you and we want to serve you. Help us in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to